Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Parties. Is it Parties? Part 6.
Well, we can make it a party. It's Las Vegas.
I think that would be great. Parts and pieces. Yes, you have to use them all. I'm Jim Olson with the National Tile Contractors Association, and I want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's webinar sponsored by Noble Company. I do want you to know it's an AIA program, and at the end we'll have I'll put some notes on the questions area and just let you know how to apply for that CEU if you're looking for it. But before I introduce today's speaker, I want to remind you that during the webinars you'll be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions, and we'll answer those questions at the end of this presentation. Unless you stump us, then we might have to get back to you, but we'll do our best. If the audio on your computer is poor, call the number on the invite to this webinar and listen on your phone. All NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented, giving you easy access to watch and/or share all current and past programs at your convenience. I do want you to know that Noble has provided 3 handouts for you. So on the handout area, you can click on that and download those if you'd like. All right, very excited. One of our better speakers over the years that's been doing these for many years is Dean Moilanen, and he's a Division 9 waterproofing, crack isolation, and permeation specialist who advises on some of the most demanding and prestigious jobs in the U.S. should say projects in the USA. As a 35-year veteran of the tile industry, Dean's relationships with architects, builders, and owners allow him access to some of the most challenging and compelling design issues in the industry. Dean's extensive career on job sites gives him a real-world perspective as he's seen firsthand success and failures relating to product selection, installation issues, and sequencing challenges. Dean, I'm looking forward to another great program. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim. And let me reiterate, Noble Company has been fortunate enough to do these presentations for years and years, and they're a great opportunity. It's always a cheap thrill for me when I travel and someone goes, "Oh yeah, I heard that presentation you did with the NTCA. You're a real live human being." But yeah, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity, and thank you for all of you who tuned in today. By the way, it's a great looking group. You all look very well slept, very well fed, you're well groomed, so congratulations. As Jim did mention, we've got a Noble comprehensive short form spec, which includes everything but the kitchen sink from us. We've included in our handouts. We have the parts and pieces, that traditional 3 slide per page delineation if you want to use that for note taking, and of course a riveting article by a wonderful writer that appeared in Tile Letters some time ago. So having said all that, let's jump into it, okay? Parts and pieces, and yes, you have to use all of them. I will give the president of our company, Dave Wermeister, credit for coming up with that title. I was, after doing enough of these, the challenge is you want to reiterate some of the same very important points, but maybe from a different or fresh perspective. And he goes, well, Dean, why don't you talk about all the parts and pieces that you see not used that contribute to failures out in the field? I said, Dave, that's a good idea. You're my boss. I like that idea. I'm going to go with it, okay? If you want to take a second to scan this QR code, it's a great comprehensive compendium of everything that Noble Company can offer you as far as architectural information. And of course, we're always available to do these type of webinars one-on-one for your office. I travel a lot. If I can get to your zone, I'm more than happy to do that as well. But just take a second to scan that if you'd like to, okay? And some brief housekeeping about Noble Company and our owners, FPC. They are located in Cleveland, Ohio, and they've been around since 1915. Great organization. They have been wonderfully supportive of our growth. I can't imagine working for a better group of people. They've just been fantastic. And of course, Noble Company, located in beautiful western lower Michigan. It's been around since 1946. Our humble claim to fame, actually two humble claims to fame. Remember the baby bouncer seat that you saw used maybe when you were a kid or your parents used it? Well, Noble Company invented that back in 46. And then to get a little more serious about ceramic tile and natural stone, we were one of the people who said, hey, you know, hot mop, lead, copper, isn't there a better way to do waterproofing for tile? And so we had the wild and wacky idea of using sheet membranes, but not just any old sheet membrane, very high quality chlorinated polyethylene membranes. We've been around since 46. Our headquarters is in Spring Lake, Michigan, where we make a lot of our linear drains, our waterproof niches and benches, our Pro Base 2. And of course, we have a factory in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we make all of our sheet membranes. Really our core competency is making excellent chlorinated polyethylene sheet membranes for waterproofing, soundproofing, crack isolation, exterior decks. This is an approved AIA presentation, and we do follow those guidelines. We'll leave some room at the end if we want to discuss some more proprietary situations, but we are an AIA approved presentation as well as an IDCEC approved session. So if you're a member of that organization, you can get your credits for that presentation here as well. Now, this is supposed to be, I won't call it a fast-paced examination, but we're going to take a look at, you know, there are a lot of different ways to skin the cat, to waterproof your shower pan. And you've got your different adherents saying this is the best way, that's the best way. But what I've seen happen over time is, unfortunately, sometimes either intentionally or by design, let me move that back one thing here, by design, parts and pieces, very important parts of the assembly are left out. It's kind of like, you know, if you've ever had to build a model for your kids or put a bike together for Christmas and you're all done and wait, I still have 3 screws and a washer, and what's this plastic thing? Oh, well, let's hope it works. Well, unfortunately, sometimes that same mentality carries out in our waterproofing, and more times than not, when you leave out that part and piece or piece, it comes back to haunt you, all right? So we're gonna take a look at what are the correct substrates to use and not to use, primarily on the wall. We'll discuss the floor briefly. We'll take a look at different types of approaches to waterproofing. We all know that there's sheet membrane and liquid membrane. We'll get into that again and kind of get a little more granular about the differences. We'll examine each unique part of the installation system and how they come together as a whole to hopefully offer you a lifetime of the installation satisfaction scenario for your waterproofing. We'll conclude by discussing some specification language. We'll talk about QA/QC, the importance of models and mock-ups, and of course, installation training. Now, backer boards, and boy, oh boy, oh boy. You know, I have tried to approach this from a variety of different angles, and there are a variety of different approved substrates you can use in a shower wet area, both on the wall or on the floor. You know, for many, many years on the floor, they've used dry pack mortar. That is starting to make transition to these lightweight foam type of products, and you know, some of these foam products have the big issue on foam products is their compression or their sometimes lack of compression. They all, most part, use EPS foam. A couple use XPS, which is extruded polystyrene, but foam can be kind of soft. We don't like to have soft substrates, so some manufacturers will add a different honeycomb matrix to increase the PSI rather. The PSI is about 235 when you add this kind of honeycomb matrix. Some companies don't. They'll just have their membrane and the foam, and those can work, but just be aware you will have different performance variations. Okay, now when we get to the wall, for years it was dry pack mortar, and of course a great method to create a substrate if you know how to do it and if you have the time. That gave way to cement backer board, gypsum cores with laminated fiberglass exterior skins, and now of course lightweight foam boards. Of course, have you heard of the tile guy? Well, you know, the tile guy says there are certain scenarios where you can use green board or drywall, okay, and certain places you shouldn't. Of course, we keep seeing I don't understand the mentality, but there are some manufacturers of waterproof membranes who will tell you, go ahead and use our waterproof membrane over drywall or green board or some other equally suspect or a not quite approved substrate. The membranes may work fine, but if the board gets wet somehow, you're going to be in trouble. So the TCNA says don't do it. Of course, NTCA says don't do it. ANSI says don't do it. The people who make green board and drywall say don't do it. And of course, the DIY tile guy, yes, he's famous on the interweb, says don't do it as well. Okay, but I'll leave that up to you. My feeling is if I were a professional business person, professionally licensed tile contractor or builder with the liability of using suspect substrates and the potential for remediation, litigation, I would stick to the organizations and say, don't use those type of substrates, okay? Now, here we see an example of a shower wet area under construction, and it looks like, I can't be sure what that is in the shower area, but it's not green board. Let's hope it's an approved substrate for wet areas. And of course, immediately outside of the shower, you see green board. Now, the question gets asked, okay, at what point is it safe to use a drywall or green board? And well, that may depend, because I've spoken to engineers who help run dormitories, and these student dormitory showers run so often, so long, that they're constantly besieged by vapor, steam, migrating through the wall assemblies into the stud wall cavities. So I have seen in those situations a very robust substrate for wet areas used well outside of the traditional wet area. I see one thing here that makes me kind of shudder, and that's drywall, tape, and mud, because whether you're in a wet area or not, drywall, tape, and mud is not an approved substrate for the installation of ceramic tile or natural stone. So that could cause problems even if you weren't in a wet area. But to be on a project where sometimes the general contractor has the drywall guy put the board up in the wet areas, and of course, drywall guys use drywall, tape, and mud, I would not want to be installing my tile or stone in a wet area on top of drywall, tape, or mud. But again, you make that decision based on your own aversion to risk or litigation. Now, here you see an example of, there's a shower area. Of course, this is using a lightweight foam substrate, but you can see that the wallboard extends well out of the typical shower area. And again, in this case, maybe this is part of a spa. Maybe it's part of a larger steam room. Maybe it's in a health club or a dormitory, but more and more we're seeing where the area where a robust substrate that can be used in wet areas is being carried out further outside of the traditional typical wet area areas. And so, of course, each manufacturer, whether it's a cement board or a lightweight foam board or a gypsum core with a fiberglass skin composite, they're going to have their own levels of performance, their own warranties, their own life cycle. So please don't assume, I see this happen all too often, well, gee, I use brand X, brand Y must be just the same. Sometimes they're not, okay? All right? Foam boards are a good example. Some of these lightweight foam boards can be used in steam rooms. Some can't. You might want to be aware of that. Of course, cement backer board has been around for a long time. And I think do I have a piece of cement backer board somewhere? Yeah, I do. I always have goodies I grab. And of course, over the years, if you've ever had to work with this, sometimes when you're making cuts, the cement backer board can crumble. It is prone, if you don't treat it nicely, it may get a little roughed up. But the good thing about cement backer board is it can dry out. So if there's a plumbing issue, if for some reason that wall substrate made out of cement backer board gets wet, it can dry out, thin set dries out. You might be able to escape a potential wet area failure if you're using a backer board as the system dries out. If you're using green board or drywall or a gypsum core with fiberglass skin that gets punctured and gets wet, you might not be so lucky. Again, we see in commercial applications still a lot of cementitious backer board being used. We do see some gypsum core with fiberglass skin substrates being used. Now, what's really mind-blowing is, and this is how seriously owners of hospitality and university and hospital organizations take, this is how seriously they take moisture mitigation. I've seen millions of square feet of waterproof membranes put on top of gypsum core fiberglass skin backer boards just to make sure there's no vapor migration into the wall assembly or stud walls. Again, check on the performance metrics of each manufacturer, as they can vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. The lightweight foam boards for many years have been used primarily in residential. We are seeing more use of that product in commercial applications, but again, check with the manufacturer to make sure you're aware of the limitations of their unique product, okay? All right, lightweight foam boards also have different types of installation methods that are unique to each manufacturer. In this case, you've got a lightweight foam board manufacturer that uses, in addition, a low permeation liquid membrane to treat certain details of the installation. But again, please resist the urge to mix and match waterproofing products. I get it. I have it in my own garage. I've got this stuff left over from project A and this stuff left over from project B. Now I have project C. Well, maybe I can just cobble together these leftovers and create my, well, it might work and it might not. And if there are any kind of installation warranty issues that come into play, performance issues, potential manufacturing defect issues, if you mixed and matched these products without each manufacturer's prior approval, you're probably not going to get very far as any kind of warranty compensation, okay? Now, I wanted to throw this slide in just because, gosh darn it, it's kind of funny. I can't tell if someone was really on a budget or if they're really hearkening to a very austere sort of a monk-like lifestyle, but you know, the raw, untreated plywood as a finished wall surface, and you see that they do have tile in the immediate shower area. It looks like a cementitious one-piece shower pan on top of a concrete floor, which, boy, I hope they don't slip and fall. I don't know that I would recommend this to anyone as something that would be a long-term solution for your wet area requirements, but just wanted to show it to you just in case you like that sort of thing. All right, fluid applied versus sheet membrane. And these are very important parts and pieces of your wet area assembly. And some of you may say, come on, you're going to have to use something. Well, yes, you are going to have to use something, but you know, there are still those people who will just waterproof the shower pan. And they'll throw green board up on the walls, and they'll put 4x4, 4¼ tile with mastic on the wall and call it all good. And that might last for a while, but I talked to an architect recently, and this is a veteran architect I've known for years, and it was a serious discussion. It goes, well, you know, Dean, it just seems like we're seeing more people use liquid membranes. That's just the way the industry is going. I go, huh, well, okay. Seems to me that a lot of legacy liquid membrane manufacturers in the last decade or so have added sheet membranes to their offerings. And for the most part, they are PE, polyethylene membranes. And just a real quick delineation, if you're going to use a sheet membrane for your waterproofing on the pans or on the walls, there's PVC, I'll put that right about here. There's PE, put that right about here. CPE is the highest performing thermoplastic, okay? It is the most chemical, heat, cold, fungal, bacterial resistant thermoplastic out there that can undergo the largest degree of stress and movement and absorb that movement without it damaging your tile assembly. So just realize all sheet membranes are not created equally. All liquid membranes are not created equally. But I'll tell you where a big problem happens, and it's showing right here at where the shower wall meets the pan. I cannot tell you enough. Let's pretend my forearm is the wall. Let's pretend my hand is the pan. That joint right there is a moving active joint, okay? It should not be grouted. And the membrane that goes over the top of it, the waterproof membrane, should be able to withstand significant constant movement, or you're going to have a failure. And I've seen these failures happen to the tune of hundreds of showers within a couple of years leaking because A, the liquid membrane was not put on correctly to the correct thickness, did not use reinforcing fabric, that wasn't allowed to cure out, or the movement was greater than the liquid or sheet membrane could withstand. So I've spoken about this many times. It's a very important part and piece of your successful wet area assembly nets. Does your membrane, how does it measure up with ANSI A118.12? Because that's a very independent way of identifying how well your sheet membrane will perform. There's standard performance, 1/16 of an inch. There's high performance, 1/8 of an inch or more. If we were live in the same room, and I'll ask you now rhetorically, do you think in a shower assembly that there may be movement that's greater than 1/16 of an inch? Most people will say, yeah, I do believe that's to be true. Okay, well then, why not specify and or use a waterproof membrane that meets or exceeds ANSI A118.12, high performance? It's not proprietary and just gives you a little additional assurance that perhaps at that very important detail, wall meets the floor, or another important detail, lots of failures happen right here where the membrane ties into the plumbing mechanical drain attachment, okay? By the way, on this slide, we've got what's going to be a loose laid shower membrane. They may put reinforcing lath, they may not, but there'll be dry pack mortar. It'll be at least 1.25 inches thick. It'll slope to 2%, and you'll put your tile stone on top of the dry pack mortar. I will tell you that this on these, you see those outside corners being used as the curb meets the wall. They are short by 2 of those curb corner pieces. There should be on each of those curb corners another curb corner that extends on the face. But again, I'll leave that to you to decide. Another part and piece that was put on but not put on to its fullest advantage. Now, by the way, the riveting article and the author to the right. I wrote this article for Tile Letter some time ago. It's been very helpful. It's just a very, very objective look at, based on my Las Vegas projects I've seen and worked on and observed over the years, on why do we see failures? Why do we see leaking shower pans? And once you get out of side installer error and the very rare, I mean very rare incidents of a mechanical or a product failure, it boils down to, was the system able to handle the movement that occurred before it leaked? Was that system able to handle the vapor migration that occurred? And of course, that article is included in your handouts today. If you're having trouble sleeping tonight, I recommend taking a quick look at it. You'll be out in a matter of minutes. From the forensic files of Las Vegas, this was a failure, and this was an independent third-party forensic consultant called in, which is kind of the oversized dentist mirror. And as you can see, the liquid membrane, grab some water here. The liquid membrane that was used, maybe it wasn't put on to the correct mill thickness. Maybe there was more movement than the membrane could withstand. I don't know, but that's a tear in the membrane, and that's going to be a problem. So be aware that these are the typical areas of failures for membranes in wet areas. And as you can see here, where the shower pan meets the wall, and you can start to see the ghosting moisture issues that are occurring at that transition, they ended up tearing up this assembly, and lo and behold, that's where the failure did occur. So a quick recap here. There is an ANSI standard, A118.12. Standard movement is 1/16 of an inch. High performance is 1/8 of an inch. And I will tell you as a general rule, I have never seen a liquid membrane meet the high performance metric. By the way, it doesn't mean it's a failure or defective. It just doesn't meet that level of performance. Well, why is that? Well, because Fluids are directly bonded, okay? You brush them on, you paint them on, sometimes you spray them on, they cure out, but they are directly bonded to your substrate. Any movement that occurs underneath, on the underside of the substrate, any thermal expansion movement issues that occur on top of the assembly, well, because the membrane is directly bonded to the substrate and the tile, you're going to have a much more direct transfer of energy. And that's why you don't see, if I'm wrong, and someday maybe I could be wrong, if there's a liquid membrane out there that meets the ANSI A118.12 performance metric, I am not aware of it. Now, sheet membranes in general are all composite. There are 3 layers. They have, would be the top layer, that's the layer that bonds to your tile or stone. There's that middle core section. Then there's the bottom layer that bonds to the substrate, okay? Now, those 3 layers make it an indirectly bonded composite sheet setup. So when you do the testing to see how well it performs under A118.12, sheet membranes, as a rule, tend to perform to a higher degree. So you'll get sheet membranes that can get to 1/8 of an inch, some even more. So make sure you're aware of that. And by the way, if you're curious about the product that you're going to be using or specifying, make sure you access the independent third-party test results. With all due respect to manufacturers, many manufacturers will do self-testing of their own products, and that can be very helpful. And their own test results might mirror those of the independent test party, but it just looks a lot better when someone who has no skin in the game, no dog in the hunt, tests your product and publishes your results, okay? I would recommend, if you're a specification writer or an architect, in your references, just reference A118.12 high performance, but then get a little more granular. Make sure the products, if you're going to reference 3 different products, make sure those products actually meet that high performance metric. I've seen incidents where they call out for A118.12, call out for high performance, and then they list 3 products and none of the 3 meet that metric. So just dig deep, okay? Now, curb your enthusiasm. Yes, the lively art of the shower curb. Obviously, we've seen a lot more linear drains out there these days, and sometimes in combination with the linear drains, you'll see a curbless shower. And of course, for ADA, you have to have a curbless shower detail. We're talking about most of the shower pans out there that mostly have a curb of some type, and that continues to be, unfortunately, a large part of failures when certain parts and pieces are not used or used incorrectly. In this particular example, there was a loose laid shower pan. It was draped over the curb. They used cement backer board, which was anchored with some type of screw, which penetrated the waterproof membrane. So in this case, had they just used a prefabricated lightweight foam curb, they could have eliminated a lot of heartache and heartbreak. Here we see another example, and you can see it. By the way, look at the lovely distribution of adhesive on the back sides of these tiles. I'm going to bet that the person who did this work is not a qualified labor adherent or believer. But they've got the pieces of backer board turned upside down. You can see the screws penetrating the backer board, which penetrated the curb core, which caused the leak, okay? Well, let me be clear. There is nothing wrong with a classic curb core, waterproof membrane, lath wrapped over the membrane, and then the dry pack mortar anchoring the whole assembly down. That is a great, well-crafted and long-lasting piece of work if done correctly, and that's a big if. There seems to be less installers out there who have perfected the fine and lively art of dry pack mortar, okay? But here you're seeing a good example of when it's done correctly. When it is done correctly, there still is a lot of time that's required to create this assembly. And of course, you have to wait for the dry pack mortar bed to cure out. So we're seeing more. Let me grab some of these here. I'm going to do a reach. Here's an example of a lightweight foam curb, okay? Now, instead of having to have a curb core with waterproof membrane, with lath, with mortar, you can use this, okay, as your curb and do all your typical waterproofing. Of course, I'd want to use a bonded waterproof membrane in this case, but many manufacturers can actually create custom curb heights, width, length for the unique requirements of your own job. And I'm going to put this curb back down over here. I'll pick it up again later. We talked about vapor migration a couple slides ago, and I will tell you, I do a presentation on vapor migration. Let me check my time here. We're doing okay. Every year, the incidence of vapor migration, litigation, remediation are increasing. They're costing more money. And besides the very significant financial impact it has on a business or a hotel or a hospital or a health club, there are very real health concerns. As I mentioned, there are those individuals who will still just create a waterproof shower pan, put green board up, and I'll call it good. But you can see here where when they peeled back the wall assembly, there was lots of black mold contained behind the assembly. So this is something you want to avoid. ASTM E96 Procedure E is the metric that can help you delineate what's acceptable and what is not. Again, if you reference in your Division 9 specifications that the waterproof membrane you're going to want installed has to meet or exceed the performance metrics of ASTM E96 Procedure E, you're going to know that your shower, your wet area is going to do a fantastic job of repelling vapor from migrating through the wall assembly. Now, I've had architects and specification writers and some contractors accuse me of, you're selling insurance. You're selling insurance. You're creating this fear of something that's not there. It's not true. When a large multi-billion-dollar project was built in Las Vegas some years ago, the owners of that company actually created their own forensic waterproofing consulting group, and their research bore out this fact that almost all hospitality, university, some residential, and some hospital scenarios of wet area steam vapor migration is so, the issue and the amount of vapor migration is significant enough to consider that shower to be almost like a mini steam room environment, okay? So again, if you reference ASTM E96 Procedure E, it's not proprietary. Some of the products out there will meet it and exceed it, and some won't. Now, as a general rule, on the liquid membrane side, some liquid membranes will meet that performance metric, some will not. The same is true of sheet membranes. Although as a general rule, sheet membranes are more likely to meet and exceed that requirement than a liquid. But please, if you're not sure, get a hold of some of the testing, make sure it's independent third party to identify for yourself how well that product is going to perform in areas of vapor migration, okay? Steam is what you're really trying to stop from moving through your assembly. And as I mentioned earlier, the litigation and remediation costs continue to skyrocket every year. And besides the financial impact, there's very real health concerns. I know I've told the story many times. When you leave Las Vegas, about every weekend, I-15, which runs from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, has about 250,000 individuals move up and down that freeway. And as you're leaving Las Vegas on Sunday afternoon or Monday morning after your wild weekend in Las Vegas, there are these big digital billboards that go, "Were you injured in a hotel? Were you hurt in a hotel? Call us, please." So on a personal family level, your own home, on a hospital healthcare level, on a hospitality level, preventing steam and vapor from migrating through your wall assembly, getting back into the stud walls, and creating mold scenarios is just good for health reasons and business reasons. Of course, what you don't want are scenarios like this, mold found in over 1,000 bathrooms at Lackland Air Force Base. That's a pretty serious scenario, okay? I have seen in Las Vegas multi-million-dollar remediation scenarios just based upon the fact that a membrane that was specified with low permeation wasn't specified, and what was installed wasn't. And through a combination of factors, there ended up being lots of mold remediation and litigation and just general heartache based on someone trying to save a couple pennies and use a less expensive product on the walls, when if they had stuck with a low permeation membrane to begin with, there wouldn't have been the problem to begin with. All right, now, this is the one that really cracks me up, although it's not funny, it still cracks me up. We're grabbing some more goodies here. There are lots of clamping ring drains that they don't have a weep hole anymore. Okay, they're like a bonded system. The membrane bonds to the top part of the drain assembly. There are no weep holes. And if you're using a drain like that, then you don't have to be concerned. But however, on many commercial projects, there are still, clamping ring drains with weep holes. And you can see these are the weep holes, okay? Now, if you're doing a dry pack mortar bed, you have to make sure those weep holes don't get clogged. Because if they do, water that somehow gets between the membrane, the dry pack mortar, and the base of the drain is going to have nowhere to go. Okay, so it's going to back up, and soon you're going to have mold in your shower pan. Well, how do you solve that? There are these little items right here called positive weep protectors. Have the generic name for them. A variety of manufacturers make them. You can see where it can actually be adjusted to varying scenarios you may have in the field. But imagine if you've got this assembly right here. Let me find my drain here. Put my drain back on. And you put the positive weep protector around it, like so. Well, now, when you put your dry pack mortar down, you're going to have channels that allow that moisture to get to the weep holes. A very simple, inexpensive way to prevent a very costly problem, a very important part and piece, okay? Now, this detail is from Tile Heaven because it shows dry pack mortar, and then what's typically been called out for is gravel or crushed tile, pea gravel or crushed tile, to be placed around the weep hole, the base of the weep holes, and then the dry pack mortar, and that allows for moisture to get to the weep holes and mortar not to clog up the weep holes. Okay, that's what's supposed to happen. Here's a photographic image of a similar detail brought to life. You see a loose laid shower pan. That means there's going to be dry pack mortar put on top of here. Sadly enough, that looks like green board or drywall on the walls, so good luck to you there. But then the dry pack mortar is supposed to interface with the pea gravel or crushed tile, again, to block the weep holes from getting clogged with dry pack mortar. Now, in this scenario, you've got a bonded membrane, but you've got a clamping ring, so at that area right around the base of the drain, you're going to have dry pack mortar, and if you had your weep hole, your positive weep protector, you place that around the base of the drain, where that extends upwards, and prevent mortar from getting to those weep holes, okay? Another very, very important part of the parts and pieces are using prefabricated inside and outside corners with inside the shower pan. Now, with most manufacturers, I won't speak for everyone, but if you do a cut and fold, I'm going to grab some of my corners here. Here are some examples of some outside corners, but there are inside corners that are made as well. A cut and fold with a sealant will actually be oftentimes acceptable for an inside corner detail that's waterproof. But a lot of waterproofing consultants and owners and contractors like to see a sort of belts and braces approach where, okay, we're going to do a cut and fold, but we're going to put inside corner or outside corner as well. Now, these inside and outside corners are very, very thin, okay, because you want to prevent bunching up. That can be a problem with 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 mosaics, but it's a bigger problem when your inside corner or outside corner leaks and you have a failure. So Using these inside and outside corners are a great part and piece to ensure you don't have a failure down the line. A lot of QA, QC people like to see the inside corners put in after you install the shower pan, you do the cut and fold, and they want the inside corner installed afterwards so they can see that it's actually been done. You can put that inside corner on the back side of your membrane, but who's going to see it? Who's going to know that it was done correctly? So just be aware, if you're a specification writer or an architect, call out that all these accessories, inside, outside corners, they have accessory pieces for escutcheon plates, for pipe collar fittings. Back then, so I can grab some of these somewhere around here. They're not within grabbing distance. Now here's the outside corner. Now this functions in two different ways. Obviously, you got the outside corner. Let's pretend this is your outside corner of a floor. There you go, okay? But on a curb, you're gonna put it, there are gonna be 4 outside corners per shower. You're gonna have one that goes there, okay? One that goes on the other side. But you're gonna put another one on this side. So there are 4 corners being used per shower curb, because what you don't want to have happen, by the way, there's the escutcheon plate and pipe collar accessories to make your waterproofing more secure and robust. But you don't want that, okay? Now, obviously, there were no curb corners used whatsoever. So over time, water just, as the door closed and as condensation and steam and water splashed on that part of the wet area, just rolled on down towards the curb, found its way inside the curb core. Over time, the curb core gets swelled and you have a failure. In this case, it's gotten so bad that part of the wall adjacent to the curb has been rotted out. Okay, when you have a sheet membrane, and even when you don't have a sheet membrane, when you get down to that concave dip on a clamping ring drain, it can be problematic. If you are trying to pull that sheet, which is going to have sloping, a radius sloping from every angle, you're going to have fish lips, okay? If you're using a liquid membrane, you're sitting there painting almost with a small little brush the liquid membrane to form a transition area from the waterproof membrane to the clamping ring drain. So a variety of manufacturers make drain flashings, okay? They come in a variety of depths to allow for different scenarios on different jobs. But as you can see, you're not having to force membranes to do something they don't want to do. This has been prefabricated, pre-molded to accommodate that transition from the shower pan to the clamping ring drain, okay? Here you can see in the field where the installer is putting the adhesive down around the base of the clamping ring drain. You can see the drain flashing near his trowel on the right-hand side of the image, okay, lower right-hand side, his margin trowel. Now, they even have drain flashings where you don't have to add the mortar. They have a lightweight type of foam component that replaces the mortar at that detail. But just make sure when you're doing that detail that it's sealed correctly. All right, you want to make sure when you have that transition from the NobleFlex drain flashing or any other manufacturer's drain flashing, it by no means is a proprietary product. A number of manufacturers make that item. You want to make sure that transition is going to be within the manufacturer's requirements. Some manufacturers say, just go ahead and use thin set. That's fine. Okay, great. Some manufacturers say, you're going to have to use a modified thin set, NTA 118.4 or greater. Some manufacturers are going to have a proprietary sealant that they want you to use, okay? But please realize that prefabricated part and piece is only as good as the way it's installed. So be very aware of what is required to make that transition sealing from the prefabricated drain flashing to the balance or your inside or outside corner to the balance of your waterproofing work. What you don't want is fish lips, okay? Now in this case, fish lips happen for 2 reasons. They were trying to make it work on a concave area. And number two, the installer assumed with this particular CPE sheet membrane that you could just use non-modified thin set. In reality, this manufacturer required a specialized proprietary sealant be used. And so, yeah, a combination of that concave detail with the inability of a non-modified thin set to create an effective bonding scenario between two pieces of sheet membrane. So please make sure you're using the correct adhesive for that detail. What you don't want to do is use the cheapest dirt in a bag, okay? I think at this point, most of the tile industry has realized for the modestly additional cost of a modified thin set, your performance and your bonding and lack of callback scenarios because you have a higher quality thin set adhesive is worth the extra money, okay? Any modified thin set ANSI A118, 118.4 or higher, there are modified thin sets to be used with wood. You can dig more deeply into those, but know that using a modified thin set will rarely ever get you in trouble for using something of higher quality, okay? Try to avoid what we call dirt in a bag because the cheapest products usually get the cheapest results. As you can see here, whether you're using non-modified thin set, modified thin set, a proprietary sealant or adhesive, attention to detail and quality matters. As you can see, there are several areas of this installation that were not really done very well. There are open exposed gaps or fish lips, and sorry, someone's trying to call in, but I'm not going to talk to him right now. You want to avoid scenarios like this. This is where good quality assurance and quality control really comes in handy. Somebody watching the installation and making sure before it gets covered up, before there's a flood test, that things are done correctly. Of course, this is a guaranteed coverage fail. I think by now we all know those wonderful rainbow arcs of thin set or any kind of adhesive are going to work against you. Trawl from left to right, trowel up and down. That way, whatever you're putting down on top of that adhesive, a sheet membrane, ceramic tile, natural stone, the air, there's going to be air that escapes out the side. You want to give it a pathway to escape. If you're doing these rainbow arcs, you're going to have intersecting lines, air is going to be trapped, and you're going to get coverage that you're not going to be very, very happy with. And of course, if you're doing a bonded sheet membrane and you've got pancake size, various loose spots because air was trapped underneath the sheet membrane, well, you're bonding tile to air. So you don't want to do that. Now, it may sound obvious. If you're going to use a sheet membrane, make sure you're installing from the center out so the air that is escaping has a pathway to escape. Again, little simple things that when not done create big problems, okay? Flood test. We just had a discussion about this, and it's hard to believe, but there's been some blowback, some pushback on flood tests as of late. And yes, I understand time is money. And gee, 2 inches of water for 24 hours seems like a lot. But when you think about the possible results when you don't, I have seen projects where there were no flood tests done and they've got 3, 4, 5 shower pans in, and now you've got some leakers. Well, gee, having to pull up all that ceramic tile or natural stone to find that leak is really going to hurt the profit margin. I've heard and I've had people try to convince me, well, can't we just flood test right around the drain? Well, can't we just flood test for like 5 hours or 9? Pick some arbitrary time. I will tell you this. I was on a project in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we came back about 22, 23 and a half hours later. It wasn't 24, but the shower pan started leaking somewhere around hour 23. So had you done the shower pan test for 5 hours or 12 hours or whatever arbitrary number you want to pick, you never would have caught it, but you would have found out later under a much more expensive scenario. And with regard to QA, QC, over the years, I have seen the level of attention and the increase in waterproofing consultants has really grown. And yeah, they're not cheap, and yeah, they can add to the cost of a project. But I'll tell you what's really expensive is having to tear out dozens, sometimes hundreds of shower pans because there was not an effective critical path QA/QC protocol put into place. The projects I have been on that have tasked QA/QC watchers, so to speak, inspectors, of course, the most unpopular guy in that bathroom, but the incidence of failures goes way, way, way down. Same is true for mock-ups or models. 25 years ago, mock-ups and models were the exception, not the rule. But it seems like, especially with waterproofing scenarios, they're being done every time, all the time. And I was just on a mock-up model scenario recently where there was some frustration because sometimes things that look good on paper, or what kind of drainer we're going to use, what system are we going to employ. You get involved in the application or installation of that model and mock-up, and it doesn't go according to plan, and people get frustrated. But my feeling is I would rather find out now, and right now, if there's an issue, that's what the model or mock-up is for. Okay, we want to take care of this when we can before production starts. And of course, we're seeing more and more. Talk about parts and pieces. Sometimes as human beings, representatives of various manufacturers who work for various companies, more and more specifications are requiring or asking that a representative of waterproof manufacturer A, B, or C be present for a pre-construction meeting, or make at some point in the progress of the project, make several stops to check on how things are going with the subcontractor. Again, I believe all these scenarios are only for the good. Yours truly on a job in Hawaii. And again, sometimes when you show up, the installers are going to look kind of sideways at you and go, I hope you're not going to cause us any issues here. But the bottom line is we're all trying to work towards the same end, and that's a successful watertight, waterproof installation in wet areas. I've seen over time where, again, all the stakeholders, the owners, the architect, the GC, the sub, they're getting together before the job starts to make sure that the waterproofing is going to be of a standard that can afford this project a long-lasting installation, and make sure everyone's aware of what the best practices are and they're on the same page. I will tell you that our company is a big fan of qualified labor, and in the 35 plus years I've been in the tile industry, I have seen just tremendous amounts of resources, finances, individual human effort put forth to increase the quality of installation, because I think at the end of the day, we all know that ceramic tile, when installed properly, has the longest life cycle of any finished good out there when installed properly. So by ensuring that we're getting qualified labor called out for in the specifications, by making sure that qualified labor is on that project, it just ensures that that project is going to be well installed and last a long time. I can tell you in the 35 plus years I've been in Las Vegas here, look, this town uses a lot of ceramic tile, a lot of natural stone. I see some wonderful, I call them the $1 million projects, just incredible uses of and skill put to use in these ceramic tile and natural stone installations. But I've also seen where you get an owner of a project, and all it takes is a couple of problems, a couple of extensive callbacks and failures, and what we don't want to see is increased use of luxury vinyl planking or stamped concrete or whatever alternative there might be to ceramic tile or natural stone. So investing in qualified labor is just a great way to ensure our own continued livelihood. Here you can see it called out for in typical specification language. And this is actually taken from a project we were working on where I think they asked for a minimum of 10 years experience, not 5, but 10 years. I have been on a project where a contractor who purported themselves to be of a qualified labor of skill was found to be misrepresenting themselves, and they were removed from the project. So more and more we're seeing some teeth, some bite to the demand for qualified labor. Okay, it's a part of spec links language as well. And these are just some of the very important areas they cover. Large format tile, membranes, waterproof membranes, sound iso membranes, crack membranes, crack isolation, mud work. It's all these areas are very, very important. And if we're all singing off the same sheet of music, chances are the songs will sound a lot better. One more look at some of the website addresses of these different groups: ACT, CTEF, the IMI, of course, National Tile Contractors Association. These are all great groups, and they're all trying to just elevate the skill of tile setters and installers, again, to ensure the livelihood and growth and prosperity of our industry. So that sort of sums it up for me. Those are the parts and pieces that I've kind of seen used and not used. And when they're not used, it's usually been to a bad end. So I wanted to share that with you folks today. I really appreciate your time. And if there are any questions or comments, I will do my best to see if I can be of some help.
Thanks, Dean. I want everyone to know Dean is a wealth of knowledge, and his information is right here on the screen. If you want to jot down his phone number and email address, I'm sure he'd be willing to help any and all of you at any time. Believe it or not, Dean, this is a first, but you've covered things so thoroughly that there are no questions, not even one question. So
I guess I'll take that as a positive. I forgot to say, Jim, was that Tony Perfect. You'll want to make sure you get credit where credit is due. Tony, Tone, at noblecompany.com.
Wait, hold on.
I'm sorry?
It's Tony, T-O-N-I, not E.
Yeah, T-O-N-I, correct. Yes, T-O-N-I, yes.
All right. So here's what's going to happen, everybody. You'll get an email tomorrow from me just thanking you for attending. You can reply back to that if you're looking for your IDCEC or AIA CEU, or if you have any questions, and I can forward them on to Dean. So I want to thank all of you. Hold on, we got a question.
Oh, okay.
All right. You went from a perfect score to a 90.
That's okay. Let's just hope I can pick up the ball and run with it here.
Can you discuss the difference between traditional water in, water out systems and topical membrane systems, and what the different parts are?
Well, there's, for many years, by the way, I'm not a licensed tile contractor, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. So, for many years, there was a loose laid, you had a pre-pitch, and the loose laid membrane was laid on top of the pre-pitch, and there would be a dry pack mortar bed. And so at that point, the tile was bonded to the dry pack mortar bed. Water is going to get down through that assembly, and it's going to kind of percolate its way down to the shower pan. And because it's sloped, it's going to make its way to the weep holes, okay? And there is nothing wrong with that way of installing ceramic tile and natural stone. It's been around for decades. And as you go to the Midwest and Northeast, still very popular, okay? But the key there is you got to make sure that those weep holes don't get clogged, because water's not going to get out of the system if those weep holes are clogged. A bonded, ANSI A118.10 bonded membrane on top of a dry pack mortar system, or we talked about these prefabricated lightweight foam assemblies. In those instances, you have a membrane where the water is hitting the ceramic tile. Majority of the water is going to flow to the drain from the surface of the tile, but because the tile is bonded right to the membrane on top of the substrate in an effectively installed correct system, water is not going to get down to the dry pack mortar bed, okay? The only difference there is some clamping ring drain assemblies will still require that little bit of mortar at the base of the drain so the water can get out of the system if you're using an old style traditional clamping ring drain. If you're using a bonded drain flange, literally the water is going to hit that tile surface, roll down to the strainer, and then out of the system. The one thing I've noticed is that on these bonded drain flange scenarios, sometimes water can collect at the base of the strainer. If you're using a natural stone mosaic, that little bit of ponding water right at the base of the strainer may create some issues for you, but there are some drain manufacturers who are actually creating channels within the throat of the drain. These are not weep holes. The water is still getting out of the system through the installed tile or stone down on the strainer, but any residual minor amounts of water that may collect at that strainer are going to exit the system with these channels that have been designed on the throat of the drain. That's the best way I can explain it. I hope that's been effective enough for the person listening to understand.
All right. It looks like that's everything. And again, if you have any questions, just send them to me tomorrow when you receive an email thanking you. Dean, thank you to you and Noble for the great information and the time letting our attendees learn a little bit more. I appreciate it. So have a good one, Dean. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great day, folks. Thank you very much.